Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick, and this is MSFS Flight Plans, the coolest little corner of the flight simming community where all we do is have the time of our lives while exploring the world, learning about cool planes and cool places together. So we're back in Hawaii, and I would never usually set up two flights so geographically close in such a short time span. You may recall we took another flight at the Big Island not too long ago, but one of our long-term members and I were chatting this week, and she made a comment about loving the Honolulu area but being utterly dismayed by the way that the scenery looked out here. And I thought, man, is it that bad? I hadn't flown out here in a while. So I took a flight out here, and it did look pretty rough. So I thought, well, that's like sending up the bat signal for me when someone says they just can't stand flying over an area because it looks bad. So I started using different add-on combos, trying different routes, different weather settings, and I think we have something that may at least be passable now. At least something where you don't just feel sick to your stomach when you're flying over it. But I'll let you guys decide that. And you can see I've selected this flying station wagon. It is the Stationair by Cessna by Coronado. And I like it. I'm a very practical guy. My first car was a station wagon, and then by choice, when I could afford a better car, I still bought a minivan. I'm a very practical guy, so I like this thing. And it's a heck of a lot easier to get started up than that last one. All we have to do is get rid of the yoke, and then turn our battery on, alternator on. Ooh, it looks like we have our landing lights on still, which are very bright in this plane. And then we'll just give it a little bit of gasoline, get the pressure up. And you do have to switch the tanks on this, which I need to remember to do about halfway through the flight. And then let that get up to full pressure, and then just go ahead and turn it on. And because it's a Coronado plane, they always do a really good job with making the engine noise change when you open the window. Listen to that. Boy, that's loud, isn't it? It sounds great, but a little bit too loud for what we're doing here. Alright, so we'll shut that again, get the avionics on. One of the things about this plane, glare shield really high. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and change our view just till we get to the runway so I can see where the heck we're going. But this plane has one of the biggest back windows in all the planes we've been in. Check this out. Look at that. We're going to spend a lot of time out here today. In fact, I'm struggling to think of any other plane with a back window this big. Wonderful for sightseeing. Same thing with the other side. So we'll be hanging out in the back a little bit on this trip. All right, let's go ahead and set this to standby for our transponder. Whoop, a little too far. All right, so the add-ons I've got, just real quick while I'm thinking about it, there's 8 of them, I believe. Not all of them that I'm linking are included because there's one for Honolulu International that makes that look really good. As you're going to see when we fly past it, it looks really bad. But it is very, very detailed, great for a freeware add-on. Someone put a lot of effort into it, but very, very performance heavy. And I didn't want to have to drop all of our other graphics settings, so I left that one out, but it is linked if you want to put it in. The only PAYWARE one I've got included in there is the Seafront Simulations Hawaiian Vessels Pack, which I've had for a while. Covers all the Hawaiian Islands and does a good job with the little boats down in the harbors and stuff, the marinas. But if you leave it out, this will still look pretty good just using the stuff that I've got included. It'll put most of the ships back in there, all the stuff down at Pearl Harbor, so don't feel like you have to get that if you want it to look like this. Just the little marina boats and the boats that are in motion, all the static ships, should be included in the freeware pack. Okay, so I think we're in good shape. Let's go ahead and get on moving here. Let me get back to my other camera view so I can see up over the glare shield. Parking brake off. We'll bring the mixture back just a little bit while we're taxiing. And we'll be on our way. There are no medians in the airport out here, so you have to kind of look for those blue lights. And then just head on over. Once we get to the whole short line, I'll stop and show you where we are on the Google map real quick, just so you know where we're going. So you don't have any anxiety about that. And this is called Kelialoa Airport, which I think took that name from the Honolulu International Airport once they changed that name to Honolulu International. And it was called Barbers Point Naval Air Station before that, and I think John Rogers Field before that. So it's had a few different names. And they said they built this place in 1942, I think, but then I also read that it was a target during the Pearl Harbor attack, so they must have had something out here. I don't know if it was an airport or not. And it may also still be joint military-civilian use. I think they were running a lot of sub-hunting operations out of here. But then I also read that they moved all the military stuff to the other side of the island in the 90s, so I don't know what's going on out here. But it's an airport. That's the important thing. As far as weather goes, I am using my AccuSeasons again, which when I rewatched our last flight, I realized I called it AccuWeather, which is the local weather radar they have on one of our news channels up here. Not AccuWeather, it's AccuSeason. And for this one, I use the Wispy Cloud setting. Drop the ceiling down to about 4,000 feet from 13,000 feet. And I thought it looked pretty Hawaiian-ish. It was very windy out here, and this plane does not do well in the wind. It was like 20 knots, so I had to chill that out a bit. All right, let's stop here for just a second, and let's pull over the Google map real quick, just so you can see where we're going. All right, so there's the Hawaiian Island chain. Our last flight that we took not too long ago in that Mitsubishi twin turboprop, we left from down here, flew around this way, checked out that volcano, came down here to Hilo, and that was a great flight if you haven't seen it yet. But now we're up here on the island of Oahu, where the capital of Honolulu is, and the airport we're leaving from is right down in this vicinity, so we're going to take off here, cruise over this way, along this side of Honolulu, check out Waikiki, which is another one of the add-ons, and it looks very good now. They got a great-looking crater down here. We'll come around this side, check out some universities, and then get a better look at Pearl Harbor as we come back to the area we left from. Check out a really cool site over here. I'm not even going to spoil that for you. Cut through that little pass in the mountains right there. Check out some more cool stuff here, here, up here, over here, and then landed a neat little strip right along the coast right here. Should be about 40 minutes in the air, so that's what we're doing today. All right, let's go ahead and get our transponder on altitude mode. Landing lights back on, one notch of flaps, and get on over the runway here. We're going to be flying on autopilot, but I've got a little bit of an issue with the way this plane flies. Really the only issue that I have, and it may be true to life, but this thing is very slow to react to any turns and overcorrects itself really bad, so it'll swing back and forth, which almost makes you a little bit airsick, but if we hop and look out that back window, you don't notice it as much, so we'll be doing a lot of that. So if you want to bring this flight plan into a little NavMap, I'll have that also linked. You're going to have to adjust it because you're going to see I have about 500 waypoints in here, and the reason why is because I had to make the turns very, very smooth. Couldn't have any sharp turns. And despite that, it'll still be kind of rocking and rolling as we're going along. So if you need to amend that in little NavMap, then, and you don't know how to do that, I've also got a tutorial video somewhere down in our video archives. Check that out. It'll show you how to do that and bring it back over into the sim if you're not familiar with that. Brakes are a little bit grabby in here, as you can see. That's fine. We're not going to use them while we're flying. Okay, check our altimeter, barometer, everything's good. I'm going to set our initial cruising altitude, and I'm just using my external hardware here for 2,500 feet. That'll be pretty good until we have to cut through those mountains, which we'll get up to about 4,000 feet for that. All right, 2,500, that overshot it a little bit. Let me bring it back down. And in a lot of them, it'll adjust it down there on the autopilot, but for some reason it's not doing that in this one, which is fine. All right, I'm ready. You guys ready? Full mixture. Let's do this. I got the time of day set at 7:30 a.m., so this is a nice morning flight, and it will look beautiful. And as soon as we get up, we'll get the autopilot turned on and start looking at stuff. Rotate. The really big mountains out here are on the southern end of the island, and we're not really going to cruise over there. They got some nice little snorkeling spots and stuff. I'll show you those at the end on the satellite map too, but we won't be going all the way down in that direction. All right, flaps up. And you see that right down there? That's the real gripe out here with the graphics. A lot of stuff got rendered flat for some reason, but where there's trees, it looks pretty good. And we'll see a lot of trees, so that works out well. All right, autopilot on, nav mode. And we'll bring our climb speed down to 500 feet a minute. Also, once we get up in the air, you'll notice that the water, let me drop my camera back a little bit. The water will look like it's just kind of dropping off. You can see along the coastline here, it looks nice and shallow. You can see down into it. But all of the satellite images anywhere in the world, if they have shallow water that goes out for a ways, looks like it just kind of drops off and it can look a little jagged. That's not the sim's fault. All the satellite images look like that. So they're working with what they got. So as we come around Pearl Harbor here, we're going to be a little bit further away from it this time, but we're going to circle around the other side and we'll get a real nice look at everything. I'll tell you a little bit about what we've got going on down there. It used to be much, much shallower than it is now. They didn't start dredging that out until the 20th century. But the locals used to call it Waimomi, M-O-M-I, which means waters of pearl. And I'm guessing they probably did that because it was so shallow that most of it probably looked a lot like this here, very light in color. And it kind of became a hot spot in the 1800s when the whaling boom really picked up, and sailors would stop out here, take a little break, about 2,000 miles from home. That's how far we are from the California coastline. And I can hear those RPMs screaming, so let's drop that back and drop our throttle back some, or we'll be overspeeding once we get up to altitude. All right, that looks good. And landing lights off. All right, let me make sure altitude's going to stop at 2,500. You know what, I'm going to see if I can just set it here, and then I won't have to worry about it. We'll see if it stops there or not. And whaling got to be so big out here that in the 1840s, the U.S. said, you know what, there's a lot of money moving out of that place. Let's see if we can get some military installations out here, and that's when they started bringing the military out. And through all that, this area was under a monarchy type rule. They had kings and queens, mostly kings, I think, running things. And I think that lasted up until the 1900s, actually. Yeah, you can see right over here where the really shallow water is. That's probably what all of Pearl Harbor used to look like back when it was the waters of Pearl. And there's Honolulu International. If you put that add-on in, it'll look a heck of a lot better. Right now, it doesn't look great at all. And this is a big airbase that they've got out here, which shares the runways with them. And that's a really big facility, actually. When you take a look at it at the end, I'll show you. It might even be bigger than the civilian terminals they have out there. But you can see that just looks terrible. If you want it to look better, throw that add-on in, but you're going to pay the price in performance. And it is a really good add-on as far as detail goes. So they didn't park any of the military ships in there until after the 1900s started up. They were probably parking them, I guess, probably down in here. The water was a little bit deeper. And they decided that area was a little bit more protected, so they started dredging it out, and that's kind of how they built up this island out here in the middle. I'll tell you about that when we circle back around. And they were more protected from sea attacks, not so much Japanese dive bombers and torpedo bombers, as they discovered in December of 1941. All right, the reason why it's stuttering a little bit here is that one of the add-ons is for Waikiki, which is just south of Honolulu, and it looks really, really good now, but it's so detailed that it's got a little bit of a performance drag. And in just a second, we're going to see a cruise ship up here. Let's see if we can spot it yet. Not yet. And next to that cruise ship is a place called Pier 9, which is kind of like their Ellis Island out here. It was a location of where most of the immigrants were coming in back in the day. And they've got a retired lighthouse down there called the Aloha Lighthouse. It was built in the 1920s, and it's got a really cool kind of Art Deco styling to it, very Gotham looking. So I guess that's kind of like their Statue of Liberty out here. All right, there's the cruise ship, and that little thing right there, which we'll see better from the other side because the sun will be hitting it, that is the Aloha Tower right there. And you can see the ground looks really red out here. I think that's true to life. Even when you look on the satellite maps, it's pretty red in some areas. But the thing that's going to stick out like a sore thumb is some of the golf courses are way too green and really blurry. And really just here around Honolulu. We'll get to some other parts of the island where the landscape looks a heck of a lot better. All right, so we're coming up on Waikiki here. I'm going to go ahead and bring our vertical climb rate down to 0 because it doesn't look like... Oh, it did. It stopped on its own. Okay, well, I should have just trusted our avionics. All right, let's jump back to the back window real quick because it is awesome. So there's Waikiki down there. Looks phenomenal. And the plane's going to do a little bit of rocking back and forth. You can see that harbor down there looks great. I think that's because of the Seafront Simulations pack. And if you're into surfing and you don't like putting your life on the line to do it, Waikiki is a big surfing destination out here, which is probably where I'd go. We're going to check out the spots where you may or may not die while surfing once we get up to the northern part of the island. And the plane is going to do a lot of wing dipping here as it tries to get back on track for the GPS. But it's not quite as nauseating from back here. Man, I'm loving this window. Look at that. Good grief. Amazing. But look how detailed that is. Looks fantastic. Really good. In just a second here, we're going to see a big rectangle coming out into the water right along the coastline, and that's called the War Memorial Natatorium. And if you didn't know what a natatorium was, well, apparently it's a very fancy word for a swimming pool. All right, I was just checking our RPMs. We're looking good. I don't think we're going to have an overspeeding problem. See, look where the plane is over there on our map. Just trying to get back on course. Really on the strug bus for that. All right, so there's the natatorium. They opened this thing after World War I. That's who it was dedicated to. And then during World War II, the military took it over for training purposes for those guys, opened it back up after World War II, and then, quote-unquote, closed it in the 1960s. I guess it was getting a little run down. And then completely barred civilian use in the 1970s. And there it just sits today. But that also got detailed pretty well. You can see what I'm talking about with the coastline here. Although you can see a little bit of depth here, a little bit further out still. All right, you can't miss this thing. You know I love that. That's called Diamond Head, and there's a Diamond Head lighthouse right there. And they called it Diamond Head because back in the day when British sailors were coming through here on their whaling ships, many were probably fantasizing about an early retirement because they thought all the little calcite crystals that cover the flanks of this thing might be diamonds. And you can imagine their disappointment when they realized they had to go cook some more blubber. And they started using this as a military base for a while, figuring it would be a much better base than anything they could possibly build out of mortar and brick. And they built that in 1906, I believe, and it became the first military reservation in all the Hawaiian Islands. And then the FAA eventually set up an air traffic control center in there, and they closed that thing down just fairly recently, 2002. And you see that little white line right there? There's a tunnel that goes through the side of this thing to get in there, which is awesome. I'd go there just to drive through that tunnel. This residential area here, you can see, looks amazing. Really, really good. No complaints about that whatsoever. The golf course down here is going to look pretty good. I know you guys might want me to go back in the cockpit, but I'm really having a hard time doing that. It just looks so good from out here. And we'll take a look at the backside of Waikiki. Look at this. There's actually some vacant properties down here right along the water. I can only guess that someone maybe tore something down to rebuild something there, because that has got to be a pricey piece of real estate. And it looks like some people have some natatoriums too. And walking distance from the coast of Hawaii, your own pool, living next to that massive crater, and a golf course, and whatever that is. Yeah, that's the thing that kind of jumps out at you. That's obviously some sort of auto gym building. Must be a mall or something, or a convention center. But that's a little too far from downtown for a convention center. All right, we're going to see a lot of athletic fields around here. I think this one's a high school. There's going to be another high school right over here. There's a smaller college. Let's see, right over here. We're going to fly right up next to it, so get a close look at everything. And then right here where you see that arena, that domed arena, that is the UH campus out here, which is their main campus for the Hawaiian Islands. But other than that thing, this looks good. No complaints. And they even got a little worn out walking path up there. That looks kind of like Lombard Street out in San Francisco, doesn't it? I wonder if they get as much traffic out here as those guys do. So far, so good, guys. So far, so good. This is nothing worse than we get in any other city that had a big building like that the sim didn't know what to do with. Alright, let's jump back in the cockpit for just a little bit. Hate to do it, but we're going to have to. Gotta have a little bit of realism on this channel. Mountains look amazing, except for that spot. Again, anywhere where there's trees looks good. Where there's a naked spot, not so good. But a cool landscape out here, nonetheless. That's for sure. There's the UH campus. And again, we're getting a little stuttering because we're so close to that add-on for Waikiki. That campus looks very, very good. I think these are some big water towers they have out here. And I think that's where the Warriors are playing today. I'll show you where they used to play in just a little bit. Another pretty cool landmark. Look at that thing. Looks like a big castle. Wonder what that is. Probably some student dorms. Very dormish looking. Another big field. I think that was a high school there. Alright, this thing right here is called the Punch Bowl Crater. And man, these guys never let a good crater go to waste out here. And in the center of it now is the Cemetery of the Pacific, which used to be a place where the locals would do human sacrifices. And apparently there were a lot of rules that were not to be broken out here. They called them taboos. And if you broke one of those, and if you came out here, you weren't coming back. So they started making this a cemetery. There were plans for it before World War II, and they had a few forts in there before that. But during World War II, they had so many dead bodies out in Guam that they weren't really sure what to do with, that they fast-tracked this and brought thousands of dead soldiers back here from Guam, and that's where they buried them. And you can see they got a beautiful little memorial area here now. I can think of a lot worse places than that to be buried. And this big square building right here that looks kind of like a pagoda is the Capitol building for Hawaii, which does not have a little dome or any kind of spire on it like all the other capitals we've flown past. And make a little mental note of that thing right there. I'm going to tell you what that is a little bit later. There's Pier 9 and the Aloha Tower again, which again you can see a little bit better here with the sun shining on it. Looks good. Cruise ship looks good. Ports look good. Tanker looks good. We're still doing alright. There's a big tanker out there. And if you have the... I would go ahead and turn all of your shipping traffic off in case there's any conflicts, especially if you have the Seafront simulations pack, because you won't need it. I have it completely turned off for everything out here. And there's the airport again. For a while, this was one of the biggest airports in the U.S. About 4,000 acres that place is. But nowhere close to currently the biggest, which is, go ahead and take your guess, Denver International. About 53 square miles. And even that pales in comparison to the largest in the world. Go ahead, take another guess. It's King Fahd out in Saudi Arabia. 300 square miles. And I don't know if I've ever flown into there now that I'm thinking about it. We'll have to check that out. Biggest of anything we got to check out. All right, we're going to start seeing some golf courses that don't look quite right. A little bit too green, a little bit blurry. There's one of them right there. But I bet things are pretty green out here because they get plenty of rain, and I'm sure this volcanic soil is extremely nutritious. And look at this crater. I forgot to see what that one's called, but they got a neighborhood built in the middle of it. Got their own little high school and everything out there. Incredible. Imagine living down there. All right, right up here in this little corner window, this is Aloha Stadium, which may be one of the largest abandoned structures in the U.S. at this point. I say that with no authority whatsoever, but it's got to be up there. They opened that in 1975, and when they built it, the contractor said, yeah, don't use stainless steel, despite being right here on the water. They said, go ahead and use weathering steel, because once that rust patina forms on it, it'll protect the interior of it. And it did rust really quickly, and it just kept on rusting. And it got so bad that it was costing them millions of dollars a year to try to maintain it, so they shut that down in 2020. And they may be tearing it down. And there it sits. Definitely looks very Hawaiian-ish, though, doesn't it? All right, here's what y'all came to see. There's Pearl Harbor. So right down here is the Pearl Harbor Memorial. A lot of people think it's this thing over here, the Arizona Memorial, but this is where the main memorial building is, which of course has a gift shop in it, because why let a tragedy go to waste? And that's the USS Bowfin tied up right there in front of it, which you can check out. That shoreline there doesn't look great, does it? Neither do these down here. But look at this. Then right here next to it looks fantastic. Very odd. So there's the Arizona Memorial, which of course the Arizona is underwater. And there's the Mighty Mo, the USS Missouri out there next to it. And you know what? Let's go ahead and hop in the back again. Why not? Oh, gotta click on my screen here. And this thing here is called Ford Island, and this used to be, that's Ford like the car. Much, much smaller, and most of it was built out by the stuff they dredged out of the harbor here. And this little island used to be a place where the natives would have a fertility ritual, and once the missionaries came out here, they put the kibosh on that. Apparently husbands and wives that were having trouble conceiving would do some kind of ritual where they would pair off with someone that wasn't their spouse, and the only rule was no jealousy. But the missionaries took care of that. Showed them what missionary really means. And this is a big grass strip right in the middle of it, which you can still select in the sim. It's about 4,000 feet, but there are plans, I read, to make that a big solar farm. And there's a nice looking power plant right there. And this thing right here, which, man, that would have been just a gimme if they modeled it. It's got a big radar dome on it, and it's called the SBX-1. And the official description of what that is something that's mobile. They haul it out into the ocean, and it's supposed to detect incoming hypersonic warheads. But some very suspicious people think it may be a HARP device. And if you know what that means, welcome to the Suspicious Persons Club. This area right here is called Middle Lock, like the kind they have out in Scotland. And this is a retired vessels place, I guess, where they decide what they're going to do with them. Kind of the death row for big ships. And on the satellite map, they've got two things that look like carriers, but they're actually amphibious assault ships. One is the Tarawa, the USS Tarawa, and the other one is the Peleliu. And I don't know what they're doing with the second one, but the Tarawa is slated to become a ship museum somewhere. I don't know what the rest of these guys are. There weren't any bookmarks for them, and those probably aren't accurate to what they are anyway. And then down here, they have a big ordnance place. If we get a little bit closer, which we're not going to do, you can see they got a bunch of bunkers and stuff out there. Very cool. And I think Ford Island here got hit pretty hard during Pearl Harbor as well. Well, pretty much everything out here got hit really hard. And you know, I forgot to mention it. On the other side of Ford Island, right about here, there's another sunken ship, and I didn't realize they had two of them out there. It's the USS Utah, which I think was being used for target practice, which is probably why they didn't get as much fanfare. But I think there were guys on it when they hit it, and I think there were some fatalities, but not nearly what happened on the Arizona. All right, looking good so far. Out here, not so much with the terrain. But then again, right next to it, just looks okay. So strange. All right, so here's the airport we left from. Is right down in this area, and I'm going to show you one more cool thing, which I'll hop back in the cockpit for that. Oh, here it is. Sorry, the airport's over here. The airplane's still trying to just get itself back on track. There's a big lump out here, and I think this is going to be it right here, and it's called Fort... It's either Barrett or Barrett. It's spelled like you would spell the thing that you stick in your hair. And they built that in the 1930s, and hauled some giant 12-inch cannons out there, naval guns that could hurl a 2,000-pound shell up to 30 miles out. And those things were so huge, the cannons were, that they had to build an extra rail line spur just to get those out here. And initially they were open air, and after Pearl Harbor, they built a big pile of dirt over everything to put in a casemate, and eventually pulled those things out, and they were using it as another Nike missile control station during the Cold War. Which is kind of coincidental because we haven't flown over any Nike missile sites, and now we've flown over 2 places where those were. You may recall there were quite a few out in San Francisco as well. And if we look down on the side of this, you can even see they modeled the little hatch where you drive into the side of this thing. Let's see if we can spot it. Ugh, look at that golf course. Terrible. And there's also a Wet n Wild up here. Right over here, this is the Wet n Wild, and you can even see some of the slides. Alright, well, I thought I could see a little hatch on there before, but maybe not. Maybe I was hallucinating again. Maybe not. You can see it on the satellite image. But that's where that was, Fort Barrett. Or Barrett, maybe. So there's Wet n Wild. And a little slide. We're a little bit too low in elevation. Can you see the slide there? Like a little tube slide right down there. Man, you're on Hawaii. Who would go to Wet n Wild? They shut the one down they had in Orlando once they started building up all those other big parks. Now every theme park also has a water park attached to it down here. Another little crater there. Looks good. Alright, we're going to see a big resort come up right here. This is a big Disney resort that they built out, and it had a funny sounding Hawaiian name, which I wasn't even going to try to pronounce, but that's what's it there, and they got their own little lagoon. Looks just wonderful. I think there's a Four Seasons over here on this side of it. But the main part of that is Disney. Another nice little port down there. The ships look good. Alright, from here on out, the landscape's going to start looking a little bit better once we just get past this other golf course here. But that looks incredibly good. That almost looks like a modded up point of interest, even though it wasn't. Not that I could discern. There was no markers on it in the sim. That one does too. Looks really good. But it's pretty big. Very nice. Okay, we're going to turn to the north now, as you can see by my 8 gazillion waypoints I've got stuck in there. And I'm going to show you something really neat. Just check out this coastline along the way. That looks really good. Mountains don't seem to be a problem. It's the flat, brightly colored stuff Sim seems to struggle with. Alright, see these huge 2 antennas sticking up here? Those are part of a VLF station, which stands for very low frequency. And we're going to get a much better look. We're going to come around here and then cut through this little pass here as we cruise up to the northern part of the island. And I actually need to climb a little bit higher to make sure we get through that. So we'll go ahead and do that. Need to be at about 4,000 feet. So this facility is called Lualualei, which I could pronounce because it was easy. And these things are extremely low frequency. They can broadcast all the way down to 3 hertz, which has a wavelength of 100 kilometers. But due to its very limited bandwidth, voice communication doesn't work very well, but basic signaling is possible, which is exactly what they use this for. And unlike higher frequency signals, they can go around obstacles like mountains, travel over the horizon, very, very long distances, and even penetrate over 100 feet of ocean water, which is what makes them great for communicating with submarines. Alright, so let's start our climb. And these 2 masts that we're going to see here, not the little one, but the other big one we're going to see in a minute, were built in 1972 and stand at just over 1,500 feet, making them 2 of the tallest in the world, at least the Western Hemisphere when they were built. And if you're curious, the tallest in the world right now is in South Dakota, over 2,000 feet. Sorry, North Dakota. North Dakota. Don't want to get that mixed up. Sorry for all you North Dakotans. Look at those things. And I don't know what all of these little things are right here. There was no other explanation for it. Probably something that we're not supposed to know about. But each of these little circles has 6 little masts in them. You can kind of see them popping in and out there. And I don't know if those are used to reduce interference, or maybe they're receivers, or what that is, but they're all over the place there. Initially, I thought this was a bombing range or something until I got closer and saw they had all those little things sticking up. And there's no craters out here. And you can see, for some reason, The other parts of those got modeled flat, but what we need to see is sticking up in the air, which is very cool. And out here they have another big, huge, this whole area out here is another ordnance holding facility. Some of them you can tell are the lumps in the ground, some of them got modeled as buildings. But in real life, all of those are big bunkers. And they're underneath us right now too, we just can't look at them because we're flying over the top of them. Alright, how are we doing on our climb rate? Pretty good. Give it a little bit more RPM, hold the throttle back a little bit so we're not overdoing that, and let's go ahead and switch our fuel. That should take care of us for the rest of the flight. We're at about the halfway mark now. Alright, we're about to fly directly over Schofield Barracks, home to the 25th Infantry Division, aka Tropic Lightning, since 1941. And this place is massive. And I'm going to look out our right window in just a second to see if we can spot some of their training ranges, which are just south of the facility, but I want to make sure we get to the right altitude first. I think we're probably going to be okay at 3,500. So we'll chill out here. I think we're going to make it. Drop our throttle back down a little bit, drop the RPMs down some. Alright. Everything looking good. I probably should have turned my fuel pump on while we switched tanks, but I did it so quick. I don't think anybody noticed. Alright, here we go. Ready? Okay, so there is the Schofield Barracks. And I don't know how many guys I got living out there, but a division is what? 10, 15,000 guys? Probably and their families too. And these are part of their training fields here. Out here you're going to see some stuff with a little bit of elevation. I don't know what they do at any of them. And out here is probably also part of their facility. And the plane's going to do its overcorrecting thing, so we may not get a real great... Well, you can see it pretty well out there. I can't get over this window. This is ridiculous. It's just awesome. Look at that view. That's wonderful. That's what I want to see in Hawaii, right there. Just perfect. Amazing. Alright, back to the cockpit. Got something else to show you. Alright, we're going to kind of cruise around the edge of the Dole Plantation. Yes, that Dole. Operating since 1900. That place started when a guy named James Dole used his life savings to move out here from Massachusetts, which seems a little bit odd for that era, but obviously paid off. And it turns out he was not only good at growing fruit, but also mechanizing the process, which just made his production boom. And Dole pineapples also appeared in the first consumer ad campaign ever for U.S. magazines. Couldn't get a date on that, but I thought it was interesting. And they built a big plantation house out here at the museum. I didn't read anything about slaves. I don't know if that was a big deal out here or not. But I was reading all this stuff from a advertising site for Dole, so I don't think that's something they put on there if they were. But they built the plantation house in '89, added a big hedge maze out here, which we'll barely be able to make out, a little tour on a train called the Pineapple Express, and of course, a gift shop. So this is going to be right out here, and that pillar's just getting in the way, so why not just hop in the back window again? So this is it out here. This is another one of the add-ons, specifically for this place. And I was trying to see if I could spot where the little train track was running, but really couldn't tell from up here. And I'm guessing this may all be their property out here. But I think the hedge maze is this little thing right here, and on some of the thumbnails that were a lot closer, you could tell that's definitely what it was, so it is modeled correctly if you want to buzz the place. Tip a wing wire over there, maybe stop down there, land in one of their fields. Grab a little pineapple smoothie. Looks good, doesn't it? Yeah, I think that is. That's the hedge maze there. And let's see, the train track probably runs out here. That looks like a very train area, maybe around there. Come back around, that's about 2 miles probably. But apparently that's a big tourist destination if you're coming out to Oahu. And I bet a lot of people that work there live there. If it's not entirely mechanized now. Apparently that was a pretty big deal. Really sped up the production procedures out here. And man, if you've never seen a pineapple plant, I thought those things would just have pineapples all over them, but one of my neighbors had one out front a couple years ago, and each plant sprouts one pineapple. So not a real efficient fruiter. Alright, let's hop back in the cockpit here. Alright, so we're going to head down to the coast now, try to take a very large turn as we head north up along the coast. But we got about 8 miles to go. So I dug up some fun facts about the island for some light entertainment while we're on our way. The only royal palace in the U.S. can be found back there in Honolulu, and it was that little building behind the Capitol that I told you to remember. It's called the Iolani Palace, and it was built in the late 1800s. And now that we know that the U.S. was trying to build some military bases out here, I would bet that was probably a bit of a bribe from the U.S. military to build that guy a huge palace, and it is pretty big. Because there was still a king out here then. So the moral of that story is, don't take gifts from the U.S. military. And as I mentioned before, Waikiki is a surfer's paradise, but for guys like me who prefer sissy waves, we go down to Waikiki. If you want to dance with death, then the beaches up on this end of the island are some of the most intense in the world. And I'll show you some of those, with names like the Bonsai Pipeline, Sunset Beach, which may be a little bit deceiving. And you can even tell when we fly over there, even from the satellite image, they got some big pipes rolling in there. They filmed more than a few big screen hits on this island, most notably Jurassic Park, which was down on the southern end of this island in an area called the Jurassic Valley. I don't know if it was called that before they filmed the movie or just named it that. Blue Crush, Hawaii Five-0, and some portions of some of the Pirates of the Caribbean were filmed out here. And apparently some of those sets can still be toured today, as if you were looking for anything else to do out on this island. Yeah, where the trees are, it just looks great. Once we come over this ridge, you'll see some spots without trees, and it's going to be stretchy and droopy. But out here looks good. Now, they probably kind of come up a little bit higher. We're going to kind of buzz the tops of this mountain, but I think we're going to make it. A few famous people born out here. Bette Midler, Barack Obama, maybe, Bruno Mars, and Nicole Kidman, who most people think of as Australian, where she lived most of her life, and her parents were from there, but she was born out here in Honolulu while her parents were visiting with an education visa. And Jack Johnson, the musician, who was born from and still lives up here on this part of the island. And if you're familiar with his music, it has a very Hawaiian flair to it. Alright, I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit. I think we're doing alright. I don't think we're in danger of overspeeding at this point. Alright, once we come back around, I'm going to hop in the back again because we won't be able to see it over the glare shield, but this area up here is a humongous Brigham Young University campus. And I had no idea they had one of these out here, which is just ridiculous. With college being as fun as it is, without living on the coast in Hawaii, having a huge campus out here, not fair. I had to live in Tallahassee for crying out loud. And one of these days we'll do a trip up there too. Yeah, look at that down there. Doggone it. You know, if you were really high, just flying over on approach on one of your liners, you'd never even notice it. But for sightseeing, just a mess. In Hawaii, for crying out loud. This is not Papua New Guinea. Clean it up, Asobo. You can do better than that. And Hawaii was part of that Oceania update. And I think they put like 4 points of interest out here. Oh, we gotta hop in the back. Hold on, because we don't want to miss this campus. Alright, so down here is the main campus facility, and you're going to see they got some nice gardens and stuff down there. Up here, they got a big temple complex, as you would have in any good Mormon town. And look at this, off the coast here, they got some little islets out there. Islets. And you can already tell the breakers are starting to pick up out here. But this is not the most intense area. That's going to be once we circle the horn up here. Look at that. And from what I could gather, it looks like this whole area is just a big Mormon community out here. I can't even imagine going to a college in a place like that. Look at these gardens here. And there's the temple there. And running away from the temple, I don't know if we'll be able to see it here. We can definitely spot it from the satellite map. They got a big, like, promenade or something going up into there. That didn't model quite right, but you get the point. You get the gist of it. That looks good, and I don't think that has a bunch of little spikes over it. That kind of looks like the thing I keep on top of my mattress. Boy, talk about a marketing gimmick. Those eggshell things for mattresses don't do anything. May as well just cut a couch cushion in half and throw it on there. This looks great. From this angle, you can't even see where that drop-off is. Just looks great. I'm wondering if in 2024 they'll try to animate some of these waves coming in. And in some spots, sometimes you can see like a little circular ripple of animated waves going around the islands. Doesn't appear to be doing that out here. And I do have the waves turned all the way up. We're not getting any wave action, but you can tell it's choppy. And this is a little town called Kahuku. And this residential area out here got their own high school. Again, probably much worse places in the world to live. Unbelievable. Looks beautiful though, doesn't it? Really, really nice. Alright, so let's hop back in the cockpit because we're going to switch to the other side of the plane here in just a little bit. As we come up around here, around the corner of the island, that little gray spot down there is probably where a cloud got modeled on the ground. When we see that, that's usually where that happens. I don't think that's a forest fire. So while we have a second, guys, just if I can cry on your shoulder for a minute, every now and then I just need a little bit of a pep talk. The last week or two, YouTube has again been, for some reason, throttling our impressions, which is, if you don't have a channel or you haven't done this kind of thing before, how often people get to see your thumbnails. Sometimes it'll pop up on the side, sometimes on your landing page, and it's been cut by like 50% over the past few weeks, which has happened a few times now. Don't know why or how that happens, but the algorithm is not... You know, when I start to feel a little bit blue about that, and you know, I don't really care, I'm not doing this for the money or anything like that, but obviously I put a lot of effort into this, and to see like our last few flights just getting a couple hundred views, it's like, doggone it. Why algorithm are you torturing me? And then all of a sudden, we'll post some just random flight up there, 1,000 views in a day. I don't know what the connection is. If I could figure that out, I wouldn't be complaining. Look at those waves down there. Look at that. So this is one of the big surfing spots out here. They do a lot of national competitions out here, and that's making my forearms feel like they're broken just looking at it. And that golf course doesn't look too bad. It has a little bit of that airbrush look to it, but not as bad as some of those others because it's not quite as bright green as some of those others were. And in the advanced version of the AccuSeason, you can adjust not just the weather settings, but also the terrain settings. You can do some presets. And I think I have this on springtime, and I'm wondering if I dulled that out a bit by selecting one of the autumn settings, if it would have reduced the brightness of some of those other golf courses. All right, check this thing out here. This is amazing. I thought it was just such a little jewel when I found this. This whole area right here is called a Telesat Teleport. And there wasn't a wiki page for that, so I had to go to their website. And I think that's what they use to just broadcast television signals, things like that from here. And as we get close to it, you'll see they've actually modeled all of the satellite dishes down there. There was not a point of interest for that. That is not an add-on. Just a little Easter egg for us, because with all this other AI stuff out there, normally that would just be made buildings or maybe little water towers or something. But as you're going to see, all of them are modeled as satellite dishes. All right, we need to start coming down because we're getting ready for our approach, so we'll go ahead and do that. Pull our throttles back some. All right, look at this. There's their big satellite dish right there. And that one looks like it's pointed straight up in the air. But all around here, they're kind of going to pop in and out a little bit. But as we pass by, you'll see them. Got some more right down here. There's going to be some that are going to show up down here. Just really cool. So again, just another reminder, we're within a stone's throw of hitting 1,000 subs, if YouTube doesn't keep punishing me for some reason. And once we get there, Discord server will open up. A lot of people contact me, say they're looking forward to that. So what I think I'm going to do, hold on just a second, let me see if I can, if anyone knows what this thing is, all the Cessnas have this. I'm guessing that's a spot to step if for some reason you need to get up there. But I've always wondered what that is. Look at these dishes. There's one there, there's two there, here's another one here. Looks like another little one there, but look at that one. That's really what it looks like. And it is gigantic like that. You can even see the little thing that goes up to the receiver on the top there. So Discord server coming. What I'm going to do is just start putting a link in the descriptions once that's open. You can go ahead and join up. Take flight suggestions, talk about flights, talk about planes, talk about whatever the heck we want. Do some live chats, some fly-alongs. All be really cool. And just yesterday, the guy that sent us the other Norway flight that we did, I've had a lot of requests to hit the fjords, which I was hesitant to do because everyone's flown by the fjords, but you've never had an experience like we do on this channel, I'd be willing to bet. So he sent me a flight plan for the west coast of Norway. We'll check that out. I'm kind of looking forward to that, to be honest with you. Yeah, the beaches down here look good. And down in here, there is an add-on pack from Takeoff, which you can get at Sim Market. And I don't know what the story is with those guys. I've bought a few of their things before, which are just okay, but they didn't have any reviews for it. But it makes all the waterfalls and animated in Hawaii, which probably wouldn't be good for a faster, higher flight like we're doing here. But I think there is a big waterfall down in here somewhere. I may get that. It was like $8, I think, just to check it out, see how good it really looks. But they do stuff all over the world, if that's how you say it. Tabaret looks like Tabaret, but I'm guessing it's probably a French outfit. So we'll hit Norway. That's going to be in the hopper. There's a spot out in Africa that's really crazy looking, out in the middle of nowhere there. So I think I'm going to get the Typhoon, which I think, other than that thing from the Maverick movie, may be the fastest plane in the sim. Because it's going to take a while to get out there, and there's really nothing to see but that. We'll go check that thing out. The water looks fantastic down there. Windmills look good, as always. Fields look good. And then we're going to do, I think our next one is going to be a helicopter trip over Miami. I flew out there in the choppers just practicing a couple weeks ago. Looks really good. And just to have a little extra fun, you know, they got a lot of famous people that live out there. We're going to see if we can do some celebrity house spotting, because who doesn't like doing that? A little paparazzi flight. But Miami looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and level off probably 1,500 feet. And I'll tell you about this airport that we're coming into. Again, landscape looks amazing. Really good. Especially from a distance where you don't have to see any of that stretching. Alright, we'll go again through the landing lights on. And let's go ahead and stop our descent, because this thing can get real slow as it's coming in. So the place we're coming into is called Dillingham Airfield. And it's mostly used for glider flights and skydiving today, but you may notice the runway looks a little bit long for this kind of thing. It's very narrow, I think about 80 feet wide, but it's 9,000 feet long. So you know what that means. It wasn't always a glider and skydiving place. They built that after the Pearl Harbor attack to diversify their holdings a little bit as far as bases go. And they had a bunch of military aircraft out here for a while. And I read that they still do some night vision training with big jets out here. And there it is right there. So that's pretty cool, and I think there was even a PAYWARE add-on for this one. There wasn't a freeware, which is shocking to me because, as you can see, that's really in a cool spot. But there wasn't anything available for it. See, that looks good, and it really is that red out here. Even where they're growing stuff, it looks good. Really, really nice. Alright, so now that we're lined up, we'll go ahead and take the autopilot off. And let's see, I got another request for a mountain flight up in New Zealand. And I think what we're going to do, I bought a helicopter that is specifically geared for, you can't get it from the marketplace. And I think I remember I had to go to the company's website to get it, but they had two helicopters, PAYWARE, that are specifically geared towards mountain flying. So that's what we'll do out there. I'm going to go check it out. I haven't flown over that yet, but he said it looks really, really good, so we'll go check that out. Alright, trim down a little bit, slow down a lot. You can barely see what looks like the runway here is actually their taxiway. The runway is to the right of that. And the threshold of it is down a good ways, so we won't come in right at the end. And we're getting a little low. We don't need to be at 1,000 feet, so we'll pick that up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and slide up again because we're sitting real low here. That's better. Alright, climb, baby, climb. Don't need to be coming in this sharp. Or blunt, I guess. Look at this. What an incredible little strip out here. One of you modders, get on top of that. Do this thing up. Alright, what kind of wind we got here? So we got a direct headwind of 10 knots, which is perfect. Might have a little bit of floating because of that, but that's alright, because we got 9,000 feet of runway here. And then once we get down, as usual, I got a great little parking spot picked out for us. That's not part of the airport, but right next to a little cabana on the beach. Hit that, one notch of flaps. And then we'll look at little NavMap. I'll show you some of the stuff in more detail. Alright, full props, full mixture. And slowing way down. And on the satellite map for this place, you can see all the gliders parked down at the other end of the runway. Alright, more flaps. And I reattached my butt kicker. I've got one of those attached to my little sim pit seat here, which is kind of nice. I was afraid you might be able to hear it, because sometimes when you really hit some turbulence or land, it makes kind of a jolting sound, but I'm not hearing it at all, so I think we're alright with that. But that kind of adds to the immersion of this experience. I wish I could share that with you guys. Oh yeah, with that 10-knot headwind, we're just going nice and slow. Nice and slow. That's alright, we're in Hawaii. I'm gonna rush out here. And if I haven't mentioned it before, guys, I think I've made the decision to go ahead and start studying for my private pilot's license. The only problem with that is time commitments for me, because I got 3 kids that are playing travel soccer. And I called the local training facility, which is really nice here in Jacksonville. Got a lot of good reviews. And they said they want you to try to fly at least 3 times a week, which for me right now would be a big challenge, but I'm thinking maybe this summer I could find time to do that. And of course, trying to pay a couple kids' way through college and car insurance and all that. The $14,000 price tag was a bit of an obstacle too, but I figured I'd at least go ahead and take the practice exam just for the heck of it. So if any of you want to cheer me on from home, that's what I've got in the store for the next couple months. Alright, so I'm going to pull off right over here. Let's see. Flaps up. We're going to pull off to the right. Get a nice little view of the water. There is a taxiway over here somewhere. They got a big apron, don't they? There it is. There's our little spot. And I'd open the window, but it'll be so loud that you won't be able to hear me, so we'll wait till we stop. Alright, where's that taxiway? Oh, there it is. Well, what do you think, guys? That's about as good as this area can get. It's just too bad it didn't get a little bit more love for the default stuff they got down there. But I think we put some lipstick on it. Hopefully good enough that you want to check it out again. Again, so just throw everything that I've got linked in there except the PAYWARE if you don't already have it. And I would probably, at least for your first flight, leave out the Honolulu International add-on unless you have an incredibly powerful computer. Mine's no stick in the mud and it was causing me problems, so just a heads up with that. Look at this view. Imagine owning this place. I'm going to park right in the driveway, to the extent that there is one. Alright. Man, the brakes are really grabby on this thing. Alright, parking brake on. And we'll shut her down, then pull over a little NavMap. Alright, let me sit back again. Alright. And bring the props and the mixture back out. And we'll kill the battery. And open the door. Alright, so here comes a little NavMap. And let's take the centering off real quick. Okay, so here's where we left from, right down here at Kalialoa, aka John Rogers Field, aka Barber's Point at some point. Cruise around here. There was Pearl Harbor. We kind of saw that from a distance initially. And here's Honolulu International over here. And let's go ahead and just take the airport off so you can see all these military planes they have parked out here at Hickman. Look at all these things. And they got some fighters parked down here in this hangar, and I bet they probably have some of these things too. I bet that's what that is. But I bet most of the time the smaller jets are on the carriers. And they've got carriers out here, they got subs out here, destroyers, they got a little bit of everything out here. Although I don't see any carriers tied up right now. You guys? There's a sub there. Any more subs? There's a little one there, that's probably fast attack. Very cool. We'll come back there in just a minute. Alright, so there was the airport, came around here, and then here is where the Aloha Tower is. You can just barely see it looking down on the top of it. That's it right there. And this place has a buffet in it. Anytime I see the word buffet, I always have to pause for a minute. So I think that might be the little tourism trap down there. We got a couple ships tied up. The cruise ship was where it was in the sim too. That was neat. So here's Waikiki down here where you can do some gentle surfing. And here's the natatorium. Look at that thing. And obviously that wasn't chlorinated. They just had salt water going in there for that. And then here they have a bunch of what look like bleachers from the ground. Oh, and you know what I forgot to point out? Their zoo is right here on the end of it, which you can kind of see some of the structures in there in the sim, which is a rare treat. Got a big amphitheater over here, but that's where the zoo is. Just once the commercial area of the... Ooh, boy, I feel like we're kind of upside down looking at that. Look at how the buildings are angled. Oof. But that's their zoo. You can check that out. And here's Diamond Head. Look at how awesome this thing is. And the lighthouse was right here, which was modeled on the sim. Looked very cool. And then here's that little entryway tunnel going into there. Really cool. And I have to wonder why they put the air traffic control center in the inside of that thing, because there's plenty of other, even much higher spots than that, but why not look for a reason to drive in there? Okay, circled around this way. That golf course looked pretty good. There's whatever that big thing was. Oh yeah, that's definitely a mall. Look at that. Yep, that's a mall for sure. But that was just totally flat in the sim default. And then here's the UH campus. This one again here is another little college. Can't remember the name of that one. And here's the UH campus now, which looked really nice. Really, really nice. And here's where the Warriors are playing today, once they kicked them out of the Aloha Stadium. Another high school there. And then here's the Cemetery of the Pacific. Let's see how close we can get to that. Boy, I bet that is just an amazing place to visit. Only thing that it's missing is a tunnel going through the side of it. They built a ramp going up to it. That's all right. So here's the Capitol building, and then here is where the palace was that they built to bribe the king. But that compared, well, they got a little courtyard in there. You don't see that very often, but that's normally where a dome would probably be on any other capital in the U.S. Came up here, saw some not so great looking golf courses. There was that neighborhood that was inside the other crater, and here's where Aloha Stadium is. They used to play the Pro Bowl down here too, so not only were the Warriors playing there, that's where the Pro Bowl used to be. And here's the Pearl Harbor Museum, and I don't know if you noticed it, this little bridge that was coming out here was built actually fairly recently. They used to only be able to get out here with a ferry, and you probably noticed that it looked like it just went right into the water. That's because it does drop down to a little land bridge they made right here. So that's kind of accurate. You just couldn't see the land on the side of it. But there's the bowfin right there. Arizona here, which you really can't see it into the water. There's the top of one of the turrets, and there's the oil slick leaking out of that thing. There's the Mighty Mo. And then here is where the Utah is. It's sunk right off of this little thing right here. And that thing just kind of capsized, and I guess they just left it down there. And here's where the thing of questionable use is, the SBX-1, whatever that's for. Altering the global weather patterns, probably. I don't want to get you guys started on that. And here's where the ship graveyard is. Middle lock. I don't know which of these is the Tarawa, but one of those probably is. Getting ready to go to New Home somewhere. And here's where the big ordnance bunker is. You can tell it's definitely what it is because all these look like ordnance bunkers. Some of them modeled okay in the sim. I'll show you that huge one here in just a second. So we circled around this way, and let me show you Fort Barrett now. And if you didn't notice it, oh, you can see it when you fly over it. This is an NDB station out here. So if for some reason you're flying with ADF, that's where you're probably locking onto. But here's Fort Barrett, and here's where the big 12-inch guns were aiming out of once they put those things under the dirt. And then over here is their little access hatch. Oh, okay, so there's probably one there. Okay, that was the other one there. That would have been, there were two of them here, so they wouldn't have put them right next to each other. There's the access hatch, see it right there? And I feel like at one of the angles when we were passing by here, I could see that. Maybe I was just at a bad spot before. And there's Wet and Wild with all its slides. The only one we could really see, oh, and it wasn't even a slide. It was a lazy river. Well, doggone it, unless it was that one there. But you guys know I love a good theme park. And here's the Disney place. Look at that. That looked pretty good in the sim. And probably looked pretty close to what it looks like in real life. I think that's the Four Seasons there. Alright, then we came to these very low frequency transmitters. Look at these things. Crazy. Look at all these things. You could tell why I thought that was a bombing range initially. Looks a lot like it. If you've seen our Yucca Flats tour, kind of looks like that. And then here's all those other bunkers. And you know what? Some of those are buildings. So maybe I was wrong and the sim was right about that. Good job, sim. I think they actually got that right, because a lot of these here did look like bunkers. And look, they got way more of them even out here. But I bet they use up a lot of ordnance back at Pearl Harbor. Alright, then we cut through that little pass, and here's where the Schofield Barracks, or maybe Schofield, however you say that, home of the Tropic Lightning. And then there's all their training grounds out there, which we saw out of our big picture window on the right-hand side of the plane. That's a big place, though, isn't it? Really big. Man, that's huge. Now look at this. That doesn't look like a golf course. That looks like it could be a big lazy river. That's probably pretty neat. They need some paddle boats or something cruising around out there. That is neat. Look at that thing. I did not notice that before. And then here's the Dole Plantation out here. And once it depixelates, we might even be able to see their hedge maze. Yep, that was it. We nailed it. That's it right there. And their train tracks. I don't know why I'm so fixated on that. No, that's not train tracks. They're out there somewhere. Stop down there and get your smoothie. And then we come out here to this BYU campus. Look at this place. Come on. Nobody needs to go to school to a place like that. Look at that. Yeah, this thing here had the little spikes all over the top of it, so that wasn't quite right. But the gardens were right. They got that. And that actually also looks right. The temple. This is the temple here, and this is like the temple check-in point, I guess. And then here's that little promenade I was telling you about. They got all these little islands out here. It looked really, really cool. Really cool. And then here's another little town. And you know that, I mean, I'm sure it costs a lot to live out here, but that doesn't look like the high rent district. It is kind of out in the boonies, I guess. Got their own high school and everything out there. I mean, look at these waves. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Looks very intense all the way around the tip here. That actually looked like it did in the sim too. That was cool. Golf courses look good. And then where's that big satellite center? Here it is right here. Look at this. So there was that huge one right there. Oh, and they had a lot more than they even modeled in the sim, but those are pretty small. But you could see quite a few of them. What a nice little treat that was, huh? So this is called Sunset Beach here, and then they had another one up here called the Bonsai Pipeline or something like that. And then they had another big one, but all these are huge surfing spots. Oh my gosh, look at that. Those are some big, big waves. Some of the biggest in the world. And then we come on in for our approach to Dillingham. Oh, and let me show you the... oh, why is it still covering them up? Alright, well, it's not going to take them off. They got all their gliders parked down here. You can see them from the Google map. But that is a cool little airport, isn't it? Any military planes anywhere? Nope, not seeing any. So that's it, guys. That's Oahu, Honolulu, Pearl Harbor. We dressed it up pretty good, I think. So I'm not complaining about it. Take another trip out there if you want, but let me just show you real quick, just so you'll be prepared for it. All of these... oh, you can't see them now because we flew past them, but it'll obviously be a very smooth flight if you take it just like we did. But look at our track on this plane. Just trying to get itself lined back up. Really, really tough. It hand flies very well, but on autopilot, a little bit rough. Had an absolute blast as always, guys. Can't wait to see y'all again in the skies. Later.